off you go.
Thank you for that, Nelly. Right, hello everyone. Right, my name's Beck. Nelly's just done a fantastic introduction. And like the first thing that I want to kind of state is that I want to make an acknowledgement of the Aboriginal people of Australia. We're going to be talking about the dream time and how it's influenced a lot of my work and some of the philosophies I've got from that. So it's an acknowledgement of the country. It's an opportunity to acknowledge and pay respects to the traditional owners and ongoing custodians of the land. This tradition is often something, and it is said like this: we acknowledge the traditional owners of the country through Australia and recognise their continuing connection with the land and the culture. We pay our respects to our elders, present and emerging. Okay, so the reason why I'm starting with this is the dream time. And I think the dream time, when it comes to the way that the Indigenous people of Australia are and how they connect, is very, very important. They often do dance as part of their storytelling, and they often sing, and they connect with each other through the dream time. Now, I don't know if people are aware of the lost generation of Australia, and these people, they connect through their dream time and storytelling, and when an Aboriginal person will talk about their dream time, it's the in and the out knowledge that they will ultimately share with you, which is quite selective. So I'm going to just play you this. This is a take from One Giant Leap, which was a film in 2002. It's not on the reference list, but it's got a beautiful quote on here. So here we go.
I'm the sum total of my ancestors. I carry their DNA. We are representatives of a long line of people, and we cart them around everywhere. This long line of people that goes back to the beginning of time. And when we meet, they meet other lines of people. And we say, bring together the lines of men.
So, the dream time, it is a collection of different stories, obviously relating to the land. And one of the stories that I'm going to be talking about is the Rainbow Serpent. And this was a story that was shared with me back in 2010. And in your reading list, there is a video from an Indigenous lady, Auntie Monero, I believe, off the top of my head, and she talks about the Woonan. So the Woonan is basically the connection of all the different communities throughout Australia, and it ties in with the people. It is the stories, it is the rivers, it is the all-encompassing. And she, in her talk, references that we are all interconnected like this. And when I look at this image here, I see networks. I see a neural network, and the interconnectivity that the Indigenous people of Australia have is something that I think we could take a lot of philosophy from. It's something that I want to learn more about, and I think we all should, as Western people, certainly of the Northern Hemisphere, because we don't get educated about this. So back in 2010, I got stuck in Kuala Lumpur. A volcano went off, and I couldn't get back home to the UK. And I'd just been traveling in Cambodia, which was a beautiful experience, very strange place. And I met these three gentlemen here in a hotel in Kuala Lumpur. And these, one of these guys is called Dwayne Diapatunga. I will say, I'm not sure if I am pronouncing that name correctly, because the artwork, which you can see to the right of this screen, is actually in my office, and I can't get into my office, and his name is written on the back. And we went walkabout in Kuala Lumpur for 3 days, and one of the evenings brought down his paintings, And Dwayne started to talk about the rainbow serpent giving life, and the circles in Indigenous art usually represent communities, and the lines are the pathways that they travel. And you will see a lot of reference to this kind of network and this giving life within the immersive design that we have throughout this presentation. Okay, so I believe that, you know, you could be a 360 producer, a VR maker, you know, a digital artist, but actually what you're doing is you are an architect of dreams. And I don't know if you're familiar with this blueprint, but it's by a guy called Buckminster Fuller, who developed these like amazing mathematical geodesic domes, which I know that like NASA use quite a lot. But it's also kind of like a metaphor for the fabric of reality. So whenever you kind of go into these immersive softwares, you will have these like masks, these nets that you will build your structures upon. And I have used the geodesic design to build a 360 green screen, which I do not recommend anybody should do. But this also then becomes quite an interesting thing when we're talking about immersive performance and changing the way that we do some of our filmmaking. Okay, so you will have heard these terms: VR, AR, MR, XR. So we have virtual reality. Now, like, I find, like, when you watch some of the videos, like if you've seen the one with Chris Milk, he uses the word VR very interchangeably. Now, this was at the start of kind of when VR started to become a lot more popular. And he's actually really referring to, in that talk about 360 video, the confusion comes with viewing things through the headset. And so virtual reality will usually be generated like through a computer. You will have 360 filmmaking, which is obviously a camera which you're kind of like viewing me on right now. And then you have mixed reality, where you will kind of have AR and VR mixed together, and you'll see them through like HoloLens glasses. And then the AR is something that, you know, you are all familiar with AR, like you've all got it on your phone. I'm using it right now in this Zoom call. And AR is a very accessible form of immersive technology. And I'll tell you a little hack here. One of the things you could do, for example, I've just marked some of our students' work at Coventry, and some of them did some augmented work, and they were using an app called Art5. And so they literally just did their work. They had their picture, and they said, Beck, on the digital screen, can you please download the app and hold it up? So I held my phone up to the flat image through the app, and it augmented. So you can seemingly augment off digital screens too. It doesn't need to be a flat object on a wall, which is really quite exciting. So this is where like worlds go within worlds. Okay, but even though we have these, at the moment, these defined words for these different areas of immersive technologies, extended realities, I think in the future, these are going to be elements of something that is way, way bigger. And this kind of goes on to one of our case studies, one of the films, Ready Player One, where we have these worlds, and it's where we can actually go in and explore, and it's this like forever ending reality. And the thing is, at the moment, we're limited to worlds we can't run, and spatial computing is going to be where that's at. And so really VR, AR, mixed reality, they're just elements of a much bigger thing in order to create these worlds. Okay, so let's drink. Reflections, anthology and storytelling. So this is a theory that I've kind of come up with, that I talked about with one of my friends. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you to a lady called Alex Rowell in a moment. So I heard this amazing podcast with not Seth Rogen, Joe Rogan, and he's got Neil deGrasse Tyson in, who is an astrophysicist, and he likes to kind of go on Twitter and analyze films scientifically. And he says in this talk, like, the only film scientifically where they've got it right is Star Wars, where Luke is on the planet of Tatooine, and then you can see the two suns or the two moons, and he's like, that's the only thing. And he got told off about this, and people were like, you're ruining the films. But then he talks about one film that has got it right, and he's relating this to fourth dimension and quantum physics. But when I listen to him tell this story, what he's talking about is really also about virtual reality.
In the movie Monsters, Inc., oh my gosh, you didn't think I was going there, did you?
No.
Those doors were four-dimensional portals to another.
That's possible?
Well, if you had 4 dimensions, that's what it would look like. Do you remember the movie?
Yes.
They take the doors home.
Yes.
They open the door, and they're in the closet of the kid that they're going to terrorize.
Yes.
That's a wormhole. That is what access to the fourth dimension looks like.
Do you think scientifically that's possible one day?
I hope so.
Okay, so I love that idea. So when we put on the headset, it's like opening the door, and we're going to go into these different worlds and meet different people, and that's quite exciting. So we're already seeing this being played out in films already. So Ready Player One was a book written by Ernest Cline. Have any of you seen the film or read the book? I actually accidentally walked onto the set in Birmingham where they were filming it one day when I was walking to work, which was very bizarre. And seeing people walk around with headsets on in the city centre of Birmingham that was meant to be, I imagine, somewhere in New York was the strangest thing, but it's kind of happening. It's going to be coming. And so we have our character here who has to go and get there's a series of 3 keys in this virtual world that is being created by the architect. And when we watch this film, it's almost like the architect, I would say, is somebody who was maybe born in the 80s. So this is like a millennial, somebody who's maybe grown up with the very early technologies, and they've designed this world, and our hero has to go and rescue the keys, and he meets all these other people in there, and it's a very interesting view of our future world, potentially. I don't necessarily think it's a positive view of virtual reality, and I think we have to be very mindful of that while we are like stepping into this kind of world. The other area where we're seeing this played out, have any of you watched Black Mirror? Absolutely, it's phenomenal. I'm seeing Georgia put a thumbs up. So I rewatched this again recently, and there's two, I think the other episode that I'm going to refer to is in season 5, and they play Charlie Brooker is very, very clever, and I think there's multiple narratives going on here that it deals with. It's it's the ethics of technology. It's, how we use it, where we're going. And in this particular episode, and I really don't want to give any spoilers, but I'm going to have to just to explain the theory. We have here the gentleman that looks very much like Matt Damon. He creates this virtual, like, second life world, if any of you have experienced that. And he then has a beta version that is set in this Star Trek world. And all of these people here are his colleagues that he has done DNA swabs, or he's managed to get DNA swabs from them. And he has recreated them in this virtual world. And he is the captain of the starship. So he is like this kind of god of his own world, but it ends up being his own destruction because the clones become smart and they realize what is happening. So I think when we're talking about ethics, I think Black Mirror really, really deals with that. There's another episode with the points with the lady who has to get to the wedding, and all of her experiences are kind of measured, just even buying a coffee she'll be given stars. And we're already seeing this being played out with companies like Uber. So if you have a good Uber driver, you give them a 5-star. If not, he's not getting a good rating. So I think look at these types of films that are being made and produced. There's quite a lot out there at the moment. But really start to think about the ethics of world creating, because we have missed a few things with the early stages of technology. So other influences. have any of you watched Have a Good Trip in Psychedelics on Netflix? Right. It's quite interesting, and I think it, you know, there's a lot of relation in this film to shamanism. So there's some reading materials on shamanism for you. And any of you are familiar with, he's a YouTuber called Jason Silver. He and a few other people have coined this idea of the digital shaman. Now, I don't know how I feel about this, because like when you hear Jason Silver speak, he only ever refers to males as shamans, which I don't think is necessarily, you know, a good idea. And also the idea that it's just this psychedelic hippie trip. And I think there's a lot more to it than that. But what I find quite interesting is listening to all the different artists talk about their stories while taking acid or LSD. And you have Carrie Fisher talk about being Princess Leia in a park, speaking to an acorn, who then started to have a massive argument with her about her being Princess Leia. And Sting as well, also going on these trips. And what they are describing somewhat is very much like what we're seeing in virtual reality. And I think artists who are really embodying this kind of psychedelic, surreal, stretching the rules of storytelling somewhat are artists like Reggie Watts. Now, Reggie Watts, there's a fantastic trailer if you watch this. Now, this is it's a 360 video, and I imagine that they have probably filmed Reggie on just a simple green screen like I've got here, and then composited that within a 360 video. He's also now doing performances on AltSpace. For those of you who are maybe running off Windows machines, you can access AltSpace on a desktop. Otherwise, you'd have to access it through a VR headset. But he is doing these kind of gigs where you can like drop in and you're there partying with Reggie in this virtual world. And he might be dancing on a mushroom, but why not? Helsinki, they have also just done this ginormous VR gig online, and they have effectively recreated the whole of their city, or like a central area of their city, and they've had like dance events on, they've had singing events on, and it's all live streaming all through AltSpace. And I think this is the way that we're potentially going to meet now. And when you go into these spaces like AltSpace, there is what's the word? There is actually a real kindness and an empathy for people and their bodies within this virtual space. So if you have the opportunity to go on AltSpace, please do. If you're on a Mac, you can still research it and see some of the videos of the experiences on there. But to actually go into that world and keep on a headset, it's even better. It's so much fun. Okay, so one of this symbol, does anybody have an idea what this may be? Got any ideas? In the chat? No? Okay, so this is a symbol for ambisonic. This is the 360, the all-encompassing. If I was to have a symbol for transdisciplinary, I would even probably use this symbol. And it's also a symbol where we could use for XR, MR, AR, VR. And it's all encompassing. And the symbol, I think, is something that we need to embody with these virtual worlds, that we are all inclusive of one another. And, you know, it's kind of when you're designing these worlds, we have to really think about empathy in all of that. Follow my notes. Okay, so just a little bit of short history. You've got Sensorama here, and this was created in 1957 by Morton Hellick. And so it has things in here like 3D, wide vision, motion, colours, a lot of things going on. And when we are in these kind of like VR experiences or virtual experience, certainly like headsets, it's very different to viewing it on a computer desktop. So we have to really think about what we are doing as these architects of dreams. And so when you first step into VR, it can be quite an overwhelming experience. Certainly, I went into space and I saw the moon and the earth, and I started to freak out the first time because the idea of what infinity was just blew my head away. And I then went and looked at like the overview effect that astronauts maybe experience, and like obviously there were two very different experiences, but I was like, maybe I had a tone of it. And you know, you see the earth as a single thing. So when we go into, you know, our senses, we have obvious ones. So we obviously have sight, we have sound, we have taste, we have smell, and we have touch. But if we don't get this right, everybody's going to have a horrible, horrible experience. And VR sickness, it can happen within a few minutes. If you go on the Van Gogh experience on Oculus, it's beautiful, but when you start floating, it's like this horrible transition, and it will wipe you out for the whole day. Okay, so there's actually about 33, 34 senses in total, which is quite an amazing amount when we think about it. So I'm going to do a little test with you. Right. Now, in a moment, we're going to hear some music. And if any of you can figure out the song and you feel like, I don't know, having a sing, start singing. Okay? But listen. There it is. To the sky and sea. Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen. That's quite an interesting concept, and you know, the way that we are experiencing the world are very, very different. So what you're hearing there is a track that is kind of slightly displaced, and your brain, if you know the song, will make up the space. Same with your eye. You actually have a hole in the middle of your eye, and when your brain is viewing these, you know, just the world, it's actually filling in that gap. Now, there is I think it's on the reading list, it is the Baby Lab 360 experience, and it's from the point of view of a newborn baby. And when we are first born, the first thing that we hear is actually our mother's heartbeat, and it's, you know, her voice. And then colours and shades will be introduced. And there's a beautiful quote in there where it says, it talks about like the first 6 months of your life is the most important, and it doesn't matter whether you're from a wealthy family or a poor family. If your parents or the the village, let's say, to bring up the child, is not engaging with the child, it will have echoes or repercussion of their interactivity when they're older. And so with that in mind, you know, they haven't really coloured in the world, so you have more brain cells when you're little. Now, for some people, that can actually, you know, when their brain is being all plugged in and hardwired from the experiences around them, it can actually create an effect called synesthesia. Now, I don't know if anybody is aware of this. This lady here is Caitlin Hover. She's brilliant. I discovered her on my master's. So synesthesia is it's a neural phenomenon. They used to think it was quite rare, but it's apparently about 1 in every 23 people, she says, has this neural program. And so effectively what happens for some of them is when they hear music is we will see colour. I have a version of it. My mum has a version of it. For some people it can be really high on the spectrum and they're not necessarily sure what's going on. But I find it strange that we don't label this in a negative connotation. This is seen as a very positive thing. For some people, they might associate words with, days of the week with colours, or I have a friend who the word gravy reminds him of blue, or he sees blue, and that's called graphite-esthesia. And so I'm just going to play you this really short clip of this. So she has programmed a violin to play the notes of colour that she sees, because it's very individualised. And this is another form of performance and immersive, and I think it's another way of seeing the world. So I'll just quickly play a short clip. Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and I think if you could, create an experience where you're telling the stories of somebody like a synesthetic, you will, you make people see the world in different ways, and then you realise that actually we're all programmed very differently. So we kind of are at this stage now where we're in the 21st century, we're in the fourth revolution, it's excelling like you wouldn't believe. It's like this big monster that kind of comes out, technology. And for some people, not quite sure how we got here. Now, I'm going to start going into the case studies. I'm going to be covering a few things. So this is actually from the Film Madness slides that I'm still in kind of production with. And this is where we start to look at immersive technology. So this is Telepresence. And we are currently doing Telepresence right now in a really small way because we're on these virtual conferences. And when making this, I wanted to understand how we got to this point. Now, you might find it difficult to keep up with it, but that's the whole point. It's gone so quickly. So I'm going to play this and let me know what you think. There's a few reflections from Steve Jobs about technology.
We're at the mechanical part of intelligence, where one of these devices can free a person from many of the drudgeries of life and allow really humans to do what they do best, which is to work on the conceptual level, to work on the creative level.
Men use guns to kill people, and men use guns to hunt animals. The question is our society alert enough to understand the power of the computer and to turn it toward the good things, or are there people and occasions where we use this tool for a bad purpose?
As we approach the 21st century, a new means of communication is emerging. This technology uses computer networks to link people on every continent. If we are destined to live in a global village, one day we will all be connected to the internet.
That's what happened. Immersive telepresence in theatre. Okay, so immersive telepresence in theatre is it's madness. It's theatre. It's using the virtual in a kind of mixed way. So what we have is we have the University of Temporary in Coventry University using this was a Polycom system, but they have changed into Nimbra as well. And it is a full-on virtual conferencing system. It scales everything up. So they're about 1,500 kilometers approximately apart. There's a latency of about 8th of a second or something, which works quite well. And they use this screen to actually, the original idea was just to rehearse, to stop actors from having to travel all over the world to use this. And it's really evolved over the last 4 or 5 years. It's won a few awards. This is my colleague, Dr. Tom Gorman, at the bottom, and his Finnish counterparts, Dr. Nico Kenahan and Dr. Tina Sijra, all artists in their own right. And what is so interesting about this technology in particular is a lot of the Zoom musicians that you're seeing at the moment, they are actually recording this stuff. Post is asynchronous, where this is synchronous, this is real time. And the sound sometimes allows you to kind of sing together, not necessarily playing instruments because there is noise cancellation, but it's a very layered experience. You know, they use it to teach yoga on. And what Tom was doing this year in 2016 in particular was to use King Lear. So you will have noticed in that history that there was references there to Brexit and all of this kind of stuff. And for us in the UK, it has felt the last 5 years that we have been living in a performance of King Lear. And Shakespeare, again, he wrote that in 1606. Going through a play. It was he was flipping the bird at the king at the time, because King James was trying to bring England and Scotland together in it, and you know, they didn't want it. There were still like issues with the kind of their version of Islamophobia, which would have been aimed towards the Scots with some of the playwrights at the time. So Tom deliberately chose this as part of the narrative, and so King Lear, if I just quickly show you this.
Okay, I'm going to start. King Lear Online. Hi. Yeah. Welcome. How are you doing? I'm not going to be able to fully discuss everything about King Lear and everything it means today, but hopefully this is something we can discover through the rehearsal process. I'm going to start with this quote by a Polish theatre director called Jan Koch. Just to frighten you and give you some indication of how frightened I am, King Lear gives the impression of a high mountain that everyone admires but no one wants to climb. And of course the corpses of those who've attempted to climb it are littered all over the mountain. So, this is what we're taking. It's a huge task. It's a monumental piece of theatre. It's a very frightening piece of theatre. I'm going to give you a little background into Elizabethan theatre.
So that is, again, it's another example of slides, but you'll see on there that he was giving lectures. He was using Adobe Connect for that, and you know, the students as well were, even though they might drop into the classroom to like have their lecture and that, they were going down the pub with their Adobe Connects on and going for virtual drinks, and so a lot of the I find a lot of the things that we're seeing with people do now, Tom was kind of experimenting a couple of years ago with this stuff. And the idea that virtual doesn't actually have to be in a headset, I think is really exciting. And the point is that, you know, virtual isn't just the headset. And I think that's where the word has got lost with. This is virtual. Being on my phone is virtual, but being in a room where there's, like, it's not a portal, it's a mirror. It's the Alice in Wonderland mirror, but it's reflecting another side, another room. And you know, we as the engineers kind of coming in as well, we would be there in the morning before the students, and Matthias would be sitting down having a coffee and all his tech stuff, getting the stream working, and that became normal. So I hope in the future we all have windows like this in houses, and this can be used to, like, for displacement. Like, my family live in Australia, and I, you know, I can't get back home at the moment, so to be able to have one of these screens, that's phenomenal. And then to be able to act and kind of come and do all this kind of stuff and play, we should all be doing that with this technology. We should be breaking technology. You're not using tech if you're not using it right. So I feel like, you know, Cherry Turkle used this phrase, we are together but alone, but now we are alone, but we really want to be together. And so maybe, you know, we will be connecting through the screens properly, as opposed to sitting and being on our phones and being not connected. And the virtual space offers this. So I'm just going to really show you this very playing some music, and they're rehearsing a scene here, so we've got like probably two sides, and we've got Samply over
Beck, do you mind if I interrupt you for a second? No, can you daylight?
Beck?
Yeah.
I think Gaspar has a point to be making about the, I don't know, you're not hearing it, Gaspar.
The thing is that the output from the videos and stuff is much higher than your voice when they're both together.
Yep, okay.
So either you have to lower down the output or the playback and talk at the same time, or do one or the other.
Thank you. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah,
No,
sorry to interrupt.
right. Okay, so I think with when you're using those what's the word? When they're using those screens, you can play around with them. You can throw it around. You don't have to be having this conversation like we are. Now, this is a vocal singing class, and I want to just see how this makes you feel just listening to it. They cannot reproduce this sound in Zoom, like the musicians who are playing their guitars and so forth. They can't all play together. But seemingly on this system, we could play together. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so what you were just hearing there, could you hear it where it was going? That is the sound cancellation working, and it is effectively cancelling out each other, but because they're making the same note, it made this beautiful ethereal sound, and the students are using their bodies to move around, and it's a very holistic experience. So this is also an interesting point, you know, if we're using things like dance as well. Now,
just Beck, just so that I'm clear. So what was happening in this video was that each of the participants were not in the same room, or were they in the same room?
No, they're not in the same room. So you've got students over in Finland, which was Samueli, and then you had the Coventry students. So they're about 1.5 kilometers of that, sorry, 1,000 kilometers.
And how did that work? I don't understand.
Okay, so basically what happens is when you've got the two sounds kind of coming in, so if we talk, it crosses each other out, yeah? Where with this, it kind of, because it was the same note, the noise cancellation kind of merged the sound together, and it was bouncing back, and so you get this echo. And I don't think that I don't think it could be done with lots of different singing or lots of different words. But it created in that moment, because they were doing a movement exercise as well. It created not only for the people doing it, but this, it was a very embodied experience, I will say. It moved everybody, and you would come out of this room and you were in your own little bubble, and the madness was kind of going on, and you would be like, what's just happened? So I think the idea for exhibitions, you know, you have to create the right environment. And say if you guys were doing this, I don't know, say if you had two dancers that were dancing at the same time, if there was a way to mirror the rooms, it would look like they're all in one place. And then even if you can project, if you've got projectors at home, I know this is tough, but it's projecting big sheets, that can also help people seem bigger than what they are. Okay, so this is a colleague of mine called Alex Rao. She is a 360 filmmaker and VR producer, and she talks about the idea in her TED Talk about immortalizing time and experiences, so these can become time capsules. So I'm currently now on a 360 camera. You can you know, make 360 content without a 360 camera, and you can put in, and I'll be showing the research students how to do this, you can put in like images into a 360 environment in Premiere and Adobe After Effects, and like create these worlds as well. And this idea that we can time travel, I think, is really, really exciting. But we also want to maybe change the way that we're using 360 as so much like not to necessarily just reproduce what we're seeing, but also extend beyond that, like we're seeing in virtual reality. So one of the methods that I use is to put like things on like Lush bath bombs and so forth, and we create these space images. Just quickly play a bit of this. That there is just an exhibition space, so you can use it as well to do 3D scanning of, if you do have a 360 camera, and you can also use it to make two-dimensional film quite interesting as well. So the 360 cameras are changing the ways that we view two-dimensional space. Now, I'm hoping today somehow as well, we can, with some of your cameras, we can do these little planets in Isadora without a 360 camera. That's one of the aims. So this is a narrative film here. Just quickly, I'll play the trailer for you. And this is a film called Lucid Lou, and I made it last year with a couple of my friends, and we have really experimented quite a lot with different forms of 360 media within this. Now you're going to be doing this as a little planet. It looks very different obviously when it's on cardboard and so forth, so I'll just quickly play this.
Have you ever felt so grey, so suffocated by an invisible mist? It's like the world is racing you by and you're static but sinking.
This is the strangest story I have ever heard. Take a seat, grab a drink, and listen to my words. I am a sick man. I am a spiteful man. I am about to tell you how it all began. I used to dream about becoming an astronaut.
Come on this kaleidoscopic adventure into the virtual world of Lucid Lou.
Okay, so that's like narrative storytelling. The other thing it can be used for as well is activism. And this is some footage that I did at Christmas, and it's a film that I'm going to be coming out probably later in the year. And we can use softwares such as Wanda. That's another, it's the cousin of Clint actually, if you've seen that in the reading list. And this allows us to build these 360 environments, but with interactivity, so it doesn't become so kind of like a passive experience. And in Wonder, what I will be doing is I will be embedding data from James's different websites and social media content, where he's been putting like his journey of like, you know, sorting out his land, because he lost his pretty much 90% of his land during the Australian bushfires at Christmas. He's an eco wine grower. And so this is just some 360 shots incorporated with drone footage. But
Beck, I just want to make sure, so it's 10:50 now, so just if you want to take some question before you move to the workshop,
yeah,
you might want to, yeah.
Got any questions?
There will be. But
Okay.
maybe show them the video, no?
Yep, yeah. I'll quickly just go through a few things, just so you can see this.
It's called the Public Creek Fire.
Yeah.
How long is the video? Probably.
Like 1 minute.
It basically was a branch falling on a power line, and then the power line broke and hit the ground. Sparks ignited the grass, and they had within half an hour they had something like 33 appliances.
Okay, so I won't play all of that just because we're short on time, but you can see it on my Instagram. So we have VR. We've got obviously like the big headsets. We've got things like Beat Saber, which is a great game, and I'll show some of the students this afterwards. But it's this idea that you can be a Jedi, and you can move, and you know, you're burning the same amount of calories you would do if you were playing tennis. You can also use things like Tilt Brush. This is a Google app. It's three-dimensional. I believe they also have a desktop version of it as well, potentially. There's a lady called Rosa Makes VR, so this could be another tool that you use. Just quickly showing you this as well. This is Pete Woodbridge and Dr. Black. Now they are using Isadora to do some gaming programming. So here they're playing Pong, and it turned into Quadro Pong. So this is some of the stuff that you could also be doing on Isadora and Touch Designer as well. And then, so these are the procedural design networks that you'll be looking at. Now, just really, really quickly, Clint is an interactive iDog builder. Isadora is like a projection mapping software that also allows you to do like, you know, 3D hacks and so forth. And then Touch Designer, I would say, is like this Isadora on steroids. So this is a beast. It is wonderful, but we're dealing with these networks, so they are quite tech heavy. I have put links on the learning resources to some free courses. They have phenomenal communities, and you know, I self-learn with Isadora. I've self-learned with Touch Designer because Nelly put me up to the challenge. And Flynn, I did a master's, so you can learn all of these things. Just quickly, a couple of things you can do with all of them. You know, and this is just a quick view of Marshmallow Laser Feast, where they've taken data of the forest, given narrative to things that we cannot see, which I think is really important, and how we all kind of meet together in these spaces. And you know, this is viewed in a forest, so you actually go and view this in a forest somewhere in the UK, and you just see the landscape in a completely different way. You can also do projections as well. So that's in Finland, and that is taking live data off their kind of census and births and deaths, and every light represents a Finnish light, and it's done by a guy called Charles Sanderson in this beautiful mirror lit room. This is just a quick example as well that you can do graphic mixing with Isadora. So that's made with, that was just made with GIFs, remixing stuff and so forth, all done in Isadora. And what you can do is you can package them out, and then you can put them into things like Flint, okay? So with all of these softwares, it's very tech specific. So what I've tried to do is include technologies that you can all have access to, and dependent on, like, you know, your technical digital skills. Like, you know, some people really get software. I remember Nelly having this discussion, you know, a while back in one of the talks. Some people really get technology. Some people are absolutely terrified by it. If you have a really good experience, you will engage with it a little bit more, but these are a challenge. So kind of like look at them as musical instruments, that you are magicians and you're creating these wonderful pots. So yeah, so that's kind of like a real quick intro into 360 and virtual worlds. There's a lot more stuff that you can kind of go into, and I could talk about this all day, to be honest with you. It's quite phenomenal. So if I have any questions, I'll stop sharing the screen.
So Beck, thank you so much for that. Thank you for putting all of this reference together and sharing some of the way that,
yeah,
you know, immersive experiences or immersive storytelling has been done. And like you said, in the next phase of this presentation, you kind of like focused on things and technology that everybody has at home, because we're very clear on the fact that not many of you have got VR headset or, you know, or anything like that, or are even technology literate. But anyway, having said that, you do have some question about virtual reality. And there is one by Gabriella. Gabriella, are you here? Where is she? You have to unmute yourself if you are amongst us, Gabriella. Gabriella, here you go.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Ask your question.
Yeah, so I have one question, because I was part of a design team for, we designed the exhibition of some VR movies from Biennale di Venezia Cinema.
Yep.
So we had to, I mean, the VR experience is through the headset and the headphone, and there is also a lot of technology involved. So like design the experience for the space was like creating a mask or a way to hide or at least embed these technological devices into the space in order to create a unique experience. So I have the feeling that when we have to design for virtual reality, there is like a schism between technology that it's like an object on itself that really doesn't need the space around to be perceived, but still people, when they go through an exhibition, they still need to be part of a narrative to understand what is the whole thing. So are there some examples that are good in this sense, or if there are some other ways to embed virtual reality in physical experiences? Because so far, I think there are very little examples.
Yeah, okay, so like, have you heard of a company called Igloo Vision?
No.
Okay, so the company, let me see, can I share my screen again? Is that all right, Nelly?
Yeah. You should just...
Yeah, okay, so let me just jump on the old internet. So Igloo Vision are a geodesic dome company, and they work with other companies like HoloViz. I don't know if you're aware of them. But they have these giant screens. They're super expensive though. They're about £20,000 to kind of get one in. And so they are projection mapping within like that kind of like 360 space. So if you're creating something that is VR, you could then like invert it, so you kind of, you've got your sphere, but you're then flipping it out within that kind of like dome space. So that's one way to do it. But then obviously you're not going to have like, I don't know, like objects kind of floating that you can interact with. So this is where kind of like the mixed reality would come into play with the lens goggles, the HoloLens goggles.
Beck, can you maybe speak as well about things like Animal Crossing and Minecraft and
oh yes,
a lot of the music industry at this point, because these are all very, you know, I would say high-end products, Igloo Vision and, you know, even virtual reality. So even though, you know, because it still has got a serious cost associated to the headset, but I would say, and to the technology to make it happen too. Well, I mean, So will you, you know, do you have an example of Minecraft or Animal Crossing, maybe of things
I've
that?
got Middle Earth in Minecraft. Have you seen this on the reading list? Okay.
No, maybe.
So, yeah. Okay. So basically, this has been built on a PC. So obviously the blocks that you're all familiar with within the community. This is the largest kind of experience, let's say, in Minecraft.
And Minecraft is a game as well, I think, because not everybody might be familiar with that game. You know?
It's an interesting one because they use it. It's a game, but they also use it for kids to kind of like program with as well. So you can build lots of. It's quite simple because it's pixel based, so it's all these kind of like different blocks. So you could build a 3D world and a 2D plane. Obviously, you have as well. I can't actually log onto it on this machine. Now, this is kind of like similar, and I've mentioned it in the talk. Now, if you have a PC, you can get the desktop version, but you can effectively like go into these like little rooms and you can create your own like community and your own exhibition spaces. And you can go and view them as well on the desktop on a PC. So this is another one that might be quite useful for you, and it's certainly growing. So yeah, you've got this support on there. I think the thing with the Macs at the moment, they are limited because Mac just haven't got their certain VR stuff available. Now, which we are going to look at today, I'm going to show you this website. This is actually a 4-year online exhibition space, and it's using Clint. Now, I believe this is what the 360. So there are actually like 5 or 6 different Clint projects, and load. So here they have created some 360 marbles of some land up in Scotland, the Isle of Rassay. Let's have a look on here. I'll jump back to the other one. Okay. So what I like about Clint is you can embed all of these kind of like different like sounds. It's a more layered way of telling story. You can have different artifacts on here. So you can basically navigate through. Okay. I think that's right. I'll go back to the beginning. Oh, sorry, practice. So if I click on London Poetry, this one I know quite well. So again, it's this kind of like, this is a much more simple way of building those kind of like networks that you will have and the worlds that you can explore. If we click on 18 Poetry Films, we have all of the artists here. So let's click on Alex's. And you can get lost in these experiences. If you go and have a look on the Clint website, they have quite a lot of projects on there. Sorry, they have quite a lot of projects on the Clint website. So if you have a look on there, they've all kind of built really differently. There's one where you can go and find Santa, and it's a really simple game that they have created. And basically, they have got a video of Santa playing, and you have to find him within like the picture, and he's there waving. And then you're like looking for him, like, where's Wally? And you click on that, and then you go to the next window. So you can have gamification within Clint. But I think with Clint, what you have to remember when you're using it, compared to something like Minecraft, where you're very much building it. Why this isn't working? So something like Minecraft, you will build the game within, or the world within the software. With Clint, and this is one where my students sometimes can't get their head around it. They think that they can do like all this wonderful editing and whatnot in Clint, but actually you do all of that and you package it, and then you use Clint to build your network out of it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Questions?
I think Gaspar had a few, but you're going to be, maybe you're going to be moving to the workshop section, and Gaspar is going to stay. So I don't know, Gaspar, do you want to, is there any question that could be beneficial to the entire group you want to ask?
I can't think of which one right now, actually, to be honest.
Okay. Well, with
that post session.
With that in mind, Beck, I'm going to stop that recording.